Hello and welcome to today's webinar entitled Never Pay Ransomware, How Veeam and NetApp Provide Complete Data Availability. I'd like to introduce you to our two hosts today. We have Melissa Palmer, who is a Senior Technologist and Team Lead at Veeam Software, and accompanying Melissa is Ahmad Edalat, who is a Technical Marketing Engineer at NetApp. We're going to get things started today with Melissa. Melissa, thank you very much for the time today and take us away.
Thanks so much for the intro, AJ, and a special thank you to my friend Ahmad from NetApp for joining me. Now let's take a look at what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about ransomware. No surprise there. It's a big threat in everybody's environment. We're going to dive a little deeper into the NetApp and Veeam partnership. We'll give you some history there and how you can develop an end-to-end ransomware solution with Veeam and key NetApp technologies like SnapLock, the Veeam hardened repository, E Series storage, and StorageGRID using S3 object lock. And then we're really going to dive deeper into that StorageGRID and S3 object lock piece, because immutability is just something that everybody is talking about lately, and it's really a solution that Veeam and NetApp have together that is a perfect end-to-end solution for your data protection. So ransomware, it is a threat in everybody's environment. If you go to your favorite search engine and type in ransomware any day of the week, you're going to see something new. Just kind of taking a look at 2020, and remember, we're halfway through 2021 already. In 2020, there were over 32,000 incidents, 3,900 breaches, and take a look at some of these different industries, right? Healthcare and finance seem to be big ones. Top breach methods, we got the classic hacking, but then we've got errors and social attacks. Compromised data, this is something we all need to think about, especially when it comes to personal data, medical data, payment data. That data is protected by compliance rules and regulations, right? Ransomware is everywhere, and of course there's a financial motivation. Everybody wants to ransomware you and send you their Bitcoin wallet, right? So you can send your Bitcoin and pay your ransom, hopefully, but we don't ever want you to have to do that here at NetApp and Veeam. And then here's some of the scary stuff too. 25% of breaches took months or longer to discover, and 27% of malware incidents were actual ransomware. So Ahmad, what do you think of these statistics?
I mean, totally. I mean, who knew we were all going to get hit by the COVID-19 pandemic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like nobody was expecting it, and the enterprises who weren't really prepared for like an event like that, they definitely maybe experienced some really huge ransomware attacks, right? So you definitely want to be ready for the next pandemic, or God knows what's next.
Exactly. All right, so ransomware on the rise. And when we talk about ransomware attacks, there's a couple different ways that hackers are getting in, right? So the three main attack vectors for ransomware: one, password compromise. Let's say you are using the same password for your corporate network as you used for something that got hacked and your information's available on the dark web, right? That's an easy way in. Email phishing, I'm sure we all know, don't click the links in emails, right? And then, of course, software vulnerabilities, which we've kind of seen everywhere. And within that is kind of an RDP compromise. A couple jokes I've seen on the internet is that RDP doesn't stand for remote desktop protocol anymore. It stands for ransomware deployment protocol. So Hamid, what do you think is the most surprising on this list to you? Like, what kind of shocks you when you take a look at this?
I mean, the breakdown is pretty interesting. I mean, just looking at software vulnerabilities and phishing attacks and the RDP compromise, maybe the percentages are a bit. I think the phishing attacks just being double of the software vulnerabilities, maybe that difference is what kind of surprises me. But I'm not surprised. I mean, email phishing for sure targets a wider audience, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you talk about kind of barrier to entry, putting together a well-crafted phishing attack for an email or a text message is a lot easier than trying to figure out, okay, how do I exploit this software or go look for these passwords, right? It's a simple way in for attackers, which is one of the reasons I'm sure we've all had some kind of training at work. This is, hey, don't click that link. Here's what to start looking for in suspicious emails and all that kind of stuff. in this day and age, we almost need to prepare to be attacked, right? It's not if we get hit by a cyber event or malware or ransomware, right? It is when. So first off, we saw that phishing stat, education. We have to teach users and administrators, don't click that link. And then, train the administrators that, hey, you have special access to the environment. You need to be extra super careful to things. Permissions and hardening, right? Principle of least privilege. We need to make sure that people only can do what they need to do for their job. They only have the correct rights, not the right rights. That sounds funny to say. The correct rights, which ties back into that separation of duties and ties back to hardening, right? Following the prescriptive guidance from vendors saying, hey, you've got this system. This is how you need to lock it down. Where we're going to spend a lot of our time today, though, is backup and recovery and disaster recovery architectures, because that is the last line of defense. So when the ransomware gets in, hopefully you find it before it activates and starts encrypting and doing all sorts of bad stuff in your environment. But if it does, your last line of defense is basically backup and recovery. And then tying into that a little bit, automated remediation plans, right? How can we automate all this stuff to make it super easy to recover from? So a lot of people, and this is a great conversation, what is data hardening and immutability, right? So it's one of those terms that you're going to hear a lot about: immutable, 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 immutability. And you're going to hear that from us, NetApp and Veeam, and you're going to hear it anywhere in the space. So what does it kind of mean to you, Ahmed?
I mean, when it comes to the conversation, definitely is basically it's for your data to be available under any possible scenario. So meaning that no matter what happens, you want to make sure that this data, it will be available to be recovered, right, Melissa?
Absolutely. It's all about your data being available to recover from when you need it. And that's where, that's one of the things about immutability, right? We want to make sure that the bad guys can't get in and delete it, because it's not just the ransomware, it's not just the malware. Someone got into your system somehow, and they might be doing other stuff too. So sure, maybe they launched that ransomware payload, but then maybe they're going to go target your backup repositories and try to delete stuff, or, just kind of generally wreak havoc. So now let's take a couple minutes just to talk a little bit about the NetApp and Veeam partnership, because that's why we're here today, right? So NetApp and Veeam have a very, very long history. And I'm trying to think about when I personally started working with NetApp and Veeam. And I think for me, it was around 2016. Funnily enough, I was actually working at NetApp at the time, but I had a lot of customers that were leveraging Veeam software. So you can see kind of the partnership started in 2014. And, throughout the last number of years, you've just seen more and more integration with Veeam and NetApp. You can almost expect that with every new hallmark release of Veeam, there's going to be something in there for NetApp. So a couple quick examples that come to mind: joint storage grid architectures in 2019. 2020 was a huge year for Veeam because it talked about our orchestration product implementing with NetApp, as well as NAS backup support. And then in version 11 this year in 2021, of course, we saw even more integration with NetApp and Veeam.
Yeah, Melissa, yeah, thanks for that. The Veeam and NetApp immutability data solutions, it just doesn't start with one solution, it ends with that one solution. So for all the storage systems that NetApp has to offer, we have different solutions that we can provide that end-to-end immutability with Veeam and NetApp. So for example, we have the NetApp SnapLock feature that comes with the ONTAP storage systems, and the Veeam hardened repository feature that you can basically configure this on the E Series storage through a Linux backup repository server. And also using the Veeam Cloud Tier technology to StorageGRID. Now with StorageGRID 11.5, we have the S3 object lock capability that you can leverage that Amazon S3 object lock API to leverage that.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you kind of look at the complete solution with Veeam and NetApp, we've got immutability through every tier within Veeam's backup repositories, right? So we kind of just talked about everything quickly. So StorageGRID, great for that long-term kind of retention. We are compatible with the S3 object lock there. So Your long-term backups, in case you need to go back really far in time, will be immutable. The hardened repository by Veeam, we're going to integrate with the E Series storage after that. And one of the reasons probably E Series is one of my favorite backup repositories out there is because it's so blazingly fast. So we're talking about immutable backups with really, really fast restores. And then if you're using NetApp ONTAP storage, there's all sorts of ways for Veeam to integrate there as well. You know, we can integrate into storage snapshots and do crazy stuff around speeding up your backups and making them super quick. But then of course we've got integration with SnapLock as well, again, providing that immutability end to end.
Oh, thanks, Melissa. So in the next couple of slides, I'm going to go over basically introducing NetApp StorageGRID to everyone and just going over some of the StorageGRID 101 basics, and at the end, just covering with the demo showing the S3 object log capability with StorageGRID and Veeam. So definitely going on, just looking at the object workloads that are coming into play as time goes on, we can see that native file applications are now talking S3 because of the market growth of S3 applications. So now we've noticed that enterprises are preferring to use a hybrid cloud as the standard, meaning that they basically want to use that low latency, high performance applications for their on-premise S3 storage, being like StorageGRID, for example. And then they're looking for an on-premise solution that's talking to hybrid cloud, for example, to the big public cloud providers such as Amazon, Azure, and StorageGRID provides that because it allows you to take advantage of the cheaper storage, for example, in public clouds. And this is all through a simple zero-touch policy engine that enables you to do that within StorageGRID. And just looking at the requirements kind of evolving for applications like S3 applications over time. S3 applications or overall and S3 storage used to be for a very long time, it used to be referred as a second or third tier storage. That's basically just being used as a storage dump. But as time is going along and high performance applications are starting to now directly write to S3, these performance requirements are really changing amongst our customers or new customers that are looking to buy that S3 solution. So StorageGRID really, on a per release basis, works hard to listen to the customers, and because an S3 storage is supposed to support a mixed workload environment and a multi-tenant environment, we really listen to our customers to really get that application workload offloaded to StorageGRID. Just looking at a timeline of when first StorageGRID was first deployed and acquired by NetApp in 2001. So you can see this is almost like a 2-decade of innovation and commitment to object storage. Every release, we've been listening to our customers of what they would like to see in the next releases, and really work closely with our partners such as Veeam to really come up with the next innovation in object storage, well, in the S3 world. And as you can see, it's a mature object storage that's been around for a very long time. So now just going over some of the NetApp StorageGRID basics. I mean, StorageGRID is a software-defined object storage that can be deployed on your bare metal servers or like a third-party E Series, for example, storage, or you can purchase StorageGRID through just the StorageGRID appliance, purpose-built appliances that are built specifically for StorageGRID. And the architecture is a durable, available, and a scale-out architecture designed to support multi-workloads. And StorageGRID, or overall an S3 storage, is supposed to provide you that availability and durability over multiple data centers. So as you can see in this diagram, we have a site, for example, in Denver, we have a site in Seattle, and we have a site in New York. And all of these different sites can talk under a single namespace. So for example, we can have applications running locally at each of these sites, talking to each site, and you can have that synchronous and asynchronous replication between each of these sites through the policy-based information lifecycle management that's provided by StorageGRID. So now just going over the StorageGRID components, just like a StorageGRID 101, I would say. So we refer to a site as a group of nodes, and within StorageGRID, minimum of 3 storage nodes are required, and that's because StorageGRID ensures high consistency and availability of metadata. And we require an admin for management of services and a load balancer node for directing request traffic to storage nodes at each site. And for a grouping of sites which are installed and configured as part of a single namespace, we call that a grid. So that means, for example, if you have a site A that's in Denver and a site B in Seattle, you can have synchronous and asynchronous replication between these 2 sites through a zero-touch policy management that's called the ILM engine. So and StorageGRID provides the purpose-built engineered load balancer that it's the SG1000 or the SG100, and it can also, what it can do is it direct those request traffics from multiple applications that are received from the client application size to the storage node based on a very smart and intelligent algorithm. So just covering more about the StorageGRID ILM, the Information Lifecycle Management Policy Framework. So there are 4 very main topics that this policy engine tries to cover. First of all, you define the durability and the cost of storage at each stage of the data's lifecycle. So depending on what your requirements are at your enterprise, you define these lifecycle management rules. And in the next slide, I'll go over an example that puts this more into practice that can show you how this is achieved. And this is not a single management policy that you make at the point of install and you have to stick with it. You can actually modify these policies as your requirements change. And StorageGRID also has a very intelligent scanning ILM engine, which for objects that are already stored in the storage system, these objects are dynamically scanned and evaluated against that policy to meet the new storage policy in case if the data needs to be moved or relocated. Also, these data policies, the geofence sensitive objects in data centers. So in case you have some locational requirements for your data, for example, if you have some data that you only like to be stored in your German data center, or you have some data that you only want to be stored in the US, you can make all of that policy with a single policy engine. You can also leverage the user-defined metadata key value to apply policy to a set of objects. What's really powerful about this ILM engine is that it can get very granular at the tenant, bucket, and even object level to really provide you with that ability to, if you need to match some sort of requirements that you have, like performance requirements for your needs and applications. So here's an example of the StorageGRID policy engine kind of determining, there are 3 main things that these policies determine. So one of them, the first of all, is where data is going to live. For example, the storage nodes that you create as part of a storage pool, these define whether your data are going to be stored on disk. For example, StorageGRID does allow you to integrate with tape and public cloud. For example, Amazon AWS Glacier in this case. So you can tier data to tape or cloud within those policies. And it also determines how long data is stored. So as you can see in that example in the retention diagram, you can see from day 0 to day 90, for example, for this storage administrator, they want to store a copy of their data in each of their data centers. And then after day 90, they want to make an erasure coded copy of this data across all the 3 data centers. And then at day 360, what happens is this data is just going to be tiered as a single copy to the public cloud, in this case being the Amazon AWS Glacier, to leverage that cheaper storage that comes with the like the public, some of the public cloud offerings. Now I'm just going to touch on some of the very main rich object storage features of StorageGRID. So because StorageGRID is not just built for a single workload or a single tenant, you can have multiple tenants running different application workloads on a single StorageGRID environment. So as you can see, we have the grid and tenant dashboard, which I'll definitely be covering in the demo. We have the StorageGRID purpose-built load balancer, as I mentioned, which provides that traffic classification monitoring QoS capability in case you need to, you have some lower demand application in terms of performance, and you can cap the performance on that application and give more to other applications that require more performance. So this is another intelligent mechanism that the StorageGRID built load balancers provide you. We have the identity management with local users. We also integrate with LDAP, like federated users, as well as a tenant management. You can create, list, delete accounts by the grid management UI or API. And all of our capabilities that are available in the UI are also available in the API. So meaning if you ever need to just use the API for your needs, then you can just use that instead of the GUI. We also provide a dashboard that shows you the usage quota for every tenant account. So this allows the grid administrator to really have control on the accounts provisioning, and for the different tenants, they can set quota for different tenants about how much storage they can use. Now, just covering on a single slide a class of StorageGRID appliances that we offer. We have the SG5000 series, which is the SG5712 with 12 drives, and SG5760 with 60 drives. These are the cost optimized platforms, and what we really see these appliances being deployed as is the secondary storage workloads. So a lot of backup applications and overall like second tier storage dump workloads are leveraging these appliances. And then we have the higher compute in terms of like stronger in terms of compute and resources with the SG6000 series, which we have the SG6060s that comes with 60 drives. And then we also allow you to expand the SG6060s with expansion shelves. So each expansion shelf comes with 60 drives, and these can happen as your requirements change. So this expansions can happen post-install. So you can start with an SG6060s, and as your capacity requirements grow, you can expand with these expansion shelves. And then we have the SGF6024. This is our all-flash appliance. So 24 SSD drives, and this appliance is mainly targeting those primary workloads that require that low latency, high performance access to the application data, right? So we see them being deployed in a lot of like video streaming environments and or even IoT. And then we have the SG1000 and the SG100 appliances, as I touched on previously. These are physical appliances to be deployed, to be used as the gateway node and admin node. So these appliances run the load balancer software on them. And the load balancing software provides you that capability, as I mentioned, the traffic classifier for tenants and bucket-based monitoring. So you could even set these QoS capabilities at the bucket level. So a certain S3 bucket is just going to be capped, for example, at 10 megabytes per second. You can make these rules using the load balancing software that StorageGRID releases with as part of the StorageGRID software.
All right, thank you so much. That was a fantastic overview and deep dive into how this technology works. So let's go back kind of to the joint solution that's been developed and talk about how you can leverage the Veeam scale-out backup repository with NetApp, specifically E Series and StorageGRID. So if you're not familiar with the Veeam scale out backup repository, you should be. And the great news is it's very self-explanatory. It's a backup repository that's a logical collection of other repositories, so you can, you guessed it, scaled out. In this case, we're really going to break things down into two tiers. The performance tier with the Linux hardened repository and the E Series storage, and that's exactly what it says, high performing backup storage, right? So the way you're going to get those super fast restores, or to be able to leverage our instant VM technology and have it run just as great as production, is again with super fast, amazing storage underneath. In this case, the NetApp E Series storage. Now, we spoke a little bit about, policies and policy-based stuff. That's exactly how the scale-out backup repository works. It's all policy-based, so based on a policy, and that's really up to you and your business to decide. I have a lot of customers that'll keep 7 to 14 days of their most recent backups in that performance tier. And then based on a policy, those backups will automatically move over to the capacity tier powered by E Series. Powered by StorageGRID. Now, again, the fantastic part of this is your StorageGRID can, of course, scale, and so could your NetApp scale backup repository. So as you kind of grow, you can add more appliances as you need to. And again, we're talking about immutability from start to finish. So that means if someone gets in and wants to wreak havoc, they can't do anything to your performance tier, right? They can't delete those backups. They can't do anything to it. Likewise, if you had to go farther back in time because, oh no, this ransomware was actually in here for a couple months, but it didn't activate, and you want to restore clean copies, you can go back further into that capacity tier. And of course, the backups are immutable. They can't be deleted. They can't be altered. Really simple to use, really simple to set up. And the great thing is this is all part of the Veeam Ready program, right? So when you decide, hey, I'm going to go with the Linux hardened repository and StorageGRID for the capacity tier, we're ready to go. NetApp and Veeam have worked so closely together from an engineering aspect to make sure that you have an easy to deploy, easy to manage solution that's going to protect your data and keep you from paying the ransom, right? You're always going to be able to recover with this kind of setup.
Thanks, Melissa. So in the next couple of slides, I'm just going to touch on the immutability capability that comes with StorageGRID. That's the implementation of the S3 Object Lock API that was recently released with the StorageGRID 11.5 release. And as some of you know, this is totally based on the S3 Object Lock API defined by AWS. So I've provided the link that you can go dive into the details of how the implementation is done. But on the two screenshots on the right-hand side, I just provided some examples of how you can create these buckets that have S3 Object Lock enabled. And in the next slide, I'm actually going to talk about the demo that I'm about to show you, which is going to configure S3 Object Lock on StorageGRID using the buckets, as well as configure S3 Object Lock and StorageGRID on Veeam, starting a backup, and also showing that when I try to delete those backups, technically those backups cannot be deleted because they have a retention set on them from Veeam. So let me just go ahead and get started with that demo. So what you're looking at right now is the main dashboard of StorageGRID once you log in. This is an administrative dashboard, so you can see you have the available storage as well as some of the health metrics on the front page. So if you navigate to configuration and S3 Object Lock, this is the global settings that you enable on the StorageGRID dashboard, which enables S3 Object Locks, and it allows tenants to create those Object Lock buckets. I have previously created a tenant account on StorageGRID specifically for this webinar, and I called it the Veeam webinar demo. So now I'm just going to use my tenant credentials to log into this tenant account. And what you're looking at, this is the tenant dashboard, what the StorageGRID tenant sees. And if you go to buckets, I'm just going to click on creating a bucket. I'm going to provide a name from my Veeam bucket, for example, just Veeam Object Lock, and then I'm just going to click on continue. Right, and this is the next screen that you see for wanting to whether you want to enable S3 object log. And when you click on enabling S3 object log, that automatically enables object versioning. That's part of the Amazon S3 implementation of the API. And next, I'll need to generate these S3 credentials that I need to use to provide to Veeam to access my S3 storage. So I'm just going to make sure I save the access key ID and a secret access key. And then once I'm done with that, I'm just going to click on finish. So now that I have these access keys created, I can just now navigate back to the dashboard. And then just going back to the StorageGRID dashboard. So next, I'm going to navigate to the load balancer endpoints page. So with StorageGRID, you actually get to provide the exact port that S3 applications are going to use to communicate with StorageGRID. We actually allow you to create these self-signed certificate just from the StorageGRID admin UI. So it's very simple, and then you just provide the IP address or DNS names as part of your these certificates. So I'm just going to click on SIG. So I created this port 10443 for my, for example, in this case, for my Veeam application to use. And then on the nodes dashboard page, this is where you see a list of all your nodes, including gateway, admin node, and all your storage nodes. And this is the gateway node that I have deployed in this demo environment, which I'm going to use the IP address to provide as an endpoint on Veeam. So here first, I'm going to go add a backup repository. Just clicking on backup repository, just going to select object storage. I'm going to select S3 compatible. I'm just going to provide it a name such as StorageGRID because I'm creating this account for my StorageGRID system, and click on next. As my service point, which is the endpoint of my gateway node, I'm just going to provide the IP address as well as the port that I created specifically for my S3 application to accept that S3 traffic. So it was 10443, which I created the self-signed certificate on it also. And here I need to create, provide those credentials that I've saved from my tenant's dashboard. So I'm just going to provide the access key and secret access key here. Then click on next. Here, when you click on browse, you can actually see the bucket that I created on StorageGRID, which I enabled S3 object lock on it. And you can see it from the list that's browsing the bucket list. And here it's where you actually provide the setting to make backups immutable. So in this example, I'm just putting it for 1 day. I will actually need to go and select the folder for it. So object lock. And then select the folder just just create a folder. I'm just going to name it Veeam. Click OK. So I'm making my backups immutable for 1 day. So this is the setting to enable that end-to-end immutability with Veeam and StorageGRID, because I've already enabled that on my StorageGRID system. So now it's just saving my object storage repository to this configuration. Right, next I'll need to create a scale out repository, which it's a grouping of my performance tier and the object storage, the capacity tier that I've created, which is StorageGRID. And then I'm just gonna click on next and add my StorageGRID as well as my performance tier to it. So here I'm just adding my performance tier, which I have created previously. Here are some settings that you can definitely set depending on your requirements. So I'm just gonna put it on performance here. Click on next. So I'm just going to extend the scale up backup repository capacity with object storage, and I'm going to add the StorageGRID account that I just created previously as part of creating a backup repository. And then just click on apply and click on OK. So now I have that scale out backup repository that has a performance tier and StorageGRID attached to it. So now I'm just going to go create a backup job. So I'm just going to leave the name at default. And here is where I'm actually going to add virtual machines to this backup job. So as an example, I'm just going to add just a single virtual machine to just show you how it works from my virtual vCenter environment. And then just click on next. Again, I here provide the sober scale up backup repository that I created just right now, that I named it -StorageGRID. And then you can also set the retention policy. In this case, I'm just leaving it at 7 days. Here are more settings that you can definitely set for the backup type that you're going to be performing. And then click on next again. And then just click on apply. So I have just previously, just fast forward, I have previously done 2 active full backups. And because of that, my previous active full backup is eligible to be moved to capacity tier. So what I'm going to try to do now is I'm just going to start a sober offload job, which is going to take my backup from that single restore point on my primary storage to offload to my capacity tier, which is StorageGRID in this case. So the job has started now. It's offloading the backups to StorageGRID. So I'm definitely going to just fast forward to show that these backups are being made on StorageGRID, but yeah, it's just going to complete soon. And if you go back to the StorageGRID dashboard, we provide these performance metrics graphs that shows you as the traffic is coming in from any application. So in this case, when we started that sober offload job, you can look at these graphs and really see how, like, what the average request duration is, or what the throughput you're getting on your StorageGRID environment. So these graphs can really help you just look at how your StorageGRID environment is performing. So now just going back to Veeam again. So now you can see under backups, object storage, I have the backup job that I started to offload backups to capacity tier on my sitting on my object storage. And if I try to delete this backup job from disk, meaning being from object storage, what I should expect to happen is the backup job should fail and tell me that this backup cannot be deleted because it's immutable. And it's so you can see I right away I get a fail to delete backup job error because this backup is marked as immutable for the time period that I provided it. Yeah, so that was a demo. I just wanted to show you what it's like to enable S3 object lock on both ends, and just showing you how simple it is to just starting a backup, and basically it's zero touch by both the Veeam administrator and the StorageGRID administrator.
Yeah, that was a fantastic demo. And that's a great point. All of this is pretty much set it and forget it, right? You need to, create your repository, set up your job, set up your policies. But once you do that on both ends, you're good to go and you are protected, right? We're immutable both in our performance tier for our super fast restores, and then for our longer term retention points, we're also immutable. And you just saw it cannot be deleted. A word of caution, remember, it cannot be deleted. So when you're keeping in mind how much storage you're going to need to store those backups. Remember, it can't be deleted if it's immutable. But the good news is with StorageGRID, it's so easy to scale up if you suddenly notice, oh, wow, we grew a lot faster and we're holding immutable backups for, 90 days, we need to make sure that we have enough space. We can just scale out that storage grid.
Yep, totally, Melissa. I totally agree.
So let's talk about a couple more of Veeam core integrations, especially when it comes to NetApp, right? So we've covered our repositories pretty great. And I want to talk a little bit about some other features when it comes to sometimes ONTAP systems, right? So NAS backup, really simple and really fast to back up those NAS shares. And also in new in version 11, we're talking about instant NAS recovery, which is a fantastic feature. Backup from storage snapshots. Now, this is like literally the reason I decided to go work from Veeam. Instead of keeping those VM level snapshots open for so long, which as we all know for VMware people like me, that when you go to commit that snap, if it's a highly transactional application or your backup took a long time, you could see performance issues on your production storage, which of course we don't want. We get around that with NetApp by actually opening the VMware snap, taking a NetApp snap, which takes seconds, and then closing that VMware snap immediately. And we actually do that backup from the NetApp snap instead of the VMware snap. So we're talking about super fast backup speeds and not impacting production in any way, shape, or form. We also have the ability to integrate, of course, with the NetApp snapshots, right, to do great snapshot orchestration stuff. Application consistent, of course, really get those RPOs down, and even have kind of snapshot only jobs driven by Veeam. And then that ties back to Veeam Explorer for snapshot. So if I want to dive into my storage snapshot, I can do that. And I can even spin up a copy of whatever application I happen to have on my storage array by using Veeam Data Labs for storage snapshots. And that's basically an instantaneous copy of our data, which is great for, dev, test, training, troubleshooting, security, remediation, pretty much just about anything. Another great thing that we have at Veeam is Veeam Disaster Recovery Orchestrator, right? So we talked a lot about recovery. We can orchestrate the recovery of VMware-based virtual machines end to end. We're talking about one-click simplicity. I click a button and I'm recovering. These recoveries are lightning fast thanks to things like our NetApp storage, especially those super fast E Series, right? Fully validated DR plans. Orchestrator will also generate a disaster recovery plan for you. It will update your disaster recovery plan for you, and more importantly, it will also keep a change log of your disaster recovery plan to please those auditors. And everything is done basically through a simple, easy to use HTML5 UI. When it comes testing time, it's a matter of, once again, one click to test your disaster recovery plan, fully documented. You'll get a report saying if anything failed, if you need to go back and fix anything. It will tell you that you're meeting your RPO and RTO. And the great thing about those tests is you can run them on demand anytime you want, or you can even schedule them to run at certain intervals. For example, you might say, okay, I want to do my DR test every Tuesday, and then I want to leverage that on-demand sandbox we just saw briefly and keep that environment open for 8 hours to give my application team that patch testing ground, that training ground, that kind of dev test environment, so they can, improve their application and decide what they need to change going forward. So really, this is a really great asset when it comes to those fully documented, fully tested recoveries that we might be facing when it comes to a situation where we've been breached or ransomware. So some key takeaways: ransomware is everywhere and is on the rise, unfortunately. Like I said, just go into Google, type in ransomware, and see what popped up today. And then really, NetApp and Veeam partnership provides that end-to-end immutability solution. We're talking about SnapLock and we talk about the fast systems, but if we really want to talk about those repositories, we're talking about the hardened repository with the super fast E Series underneath, and then the Veeam cloud tier to StorageGRID with S3 object lock. And both those make up the Veeam scale-out backup repository, which is pretty much the intelligent solution for policy-driven data management when it's immutable end-to-end. So thank you so much for joining us today. Hamid, any closing remarks?
I just honestly wanted to thank everyone for listening in, and I hope you found this session hopeful. This session that Melissa and I tried to really highlight the Veeam and NetApp partnership to address the ransomware threat that's out there. That's all. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you so much. And if anybody has any questions, we're standing by to answer them.
All right, thank you everybody for your time today. We do have a few questions that have come in. Have a couple for Melissa. Do you have, first question is, do you have to do anything special to use NetApp storage with Veeam?
Oh, thank you. That's a good one. As you saw in the demo, the answer is no. And that kind of goes across no matter how you're leveraging NetApp, whether you're using it for repositories or part of the scale-out backup repository, or even if you want to use that integration with NetApp snapshots that I spoke about for VMware. So let's say I went and I created a VMware backup job and I'm like, oh man, now I got to go and enable the NetApp stuff. You don't have to do any of that. Veeam is smart enough to know that if it sees you creating a backup jobs for VMs that are on a NetApp data store, it will just automatically configure that backup from snapshot functionality for you. So no, there's no extra configuration needed.
Excellent. Have another one from Melissa. And just for everybody on the call, thanks for attending. If you do have any questions, please use the questions tab to enter those in now. Second question here for Melissa. Do you have any suggestions for automating disaster recovery testing?
Yeah, absolutely. And it all goes back to Veeam Disaster Recovery Orchestrator, which can really make your life a lot easier if you're using NetApp for a number of ways. So first of all, you can do all of your DR testing from storage snapshots, right? That is super, super fast. I mean, it's as quick as mounting the storage snapshot, starting up the VMs, and away you go for testing. You can also use instant VM recovery technology for disaster recovery testing. And when you do that on something like the E Series, again, it's blazingly fast to do that testing, and it's really going to accurately gauge your real world RTO. And the best part about this is you can do it on demand. So, okay, I need to go test my DR plan, we're good to go. Or you can actually schedule it to run, once a month, once a week, whatever you want, and then kind of use that environment as an on-demand sandbox and, do whatever you want in there, patch testing, security testing, go in and break stuff, let the new person play with it. So there's a lot of different ways you can just kind of automate all of that disaster recovery testing with NetApp and Veeam.
Excellent. All right, we got a flurry of questions coming in here. I'll try to get to as many as we can here. And this could be for either Melissa or Ahmad. Does Veeam leverage NetApp SnapDiff?
I actually just started typing the answer to that one. No, it doesn't. So when we're talking about the Veeam NAS backup, that would kind of be where SnapDiff could come into play. But Veeam's pretty much using its proprietary technology under the cover and the NAS backup engine that it developed.
Okay. And this can be for either Ahmad or Melissa. Can you run Sure Backup off a backup copy?
I would need to know a little bit more about what you mean exactly by backup copy. But yeah, so like I said before, you can actually run Sure Backup off of NetApp snapshots as well, NetApp ONTAP snapshots. So there's a lot of different things you can leverage for that Sure Backup job.
Okay, great. Have a question. It's more of a scenario. What would be a good strategy for a 4 terabyte data backup migration from Veeam to a new Veeam backup infrastructure?
Yeah, you need to talk to your Veeam account team about that. That's a little bit too detailed to get into on a webinar like this. But Veeam has a ton of resources they can bring in to help you.
Sure. Going to the contact page on veeam.com is always a good way to get a conversation started. So I'd encourage that. Again, question for either Ahmad or Melissa. Thoughts on volume snapshots and protecting SAM files and registry of servers from harvesting of data from the backups?
I don't know what a SAM thing is, but as far as using storage snapshots and protecting data, I mean, there's nothing necessarily unprotected about it. There's no security risk. Again, as long as you're following best practices, and I know, Veeam and NetApp both have extensive hardening guides out there of how to protect your environment from malicious actors, right? Because that's really your risk with something like that. Either someone's getting into your system and deleting things or breaking stuff, or like malicious actor type stuff. So there's nothing like inherently insecure about that as long as you're following best practices in your environment.
Okay, great.
I'm talking too much.
Can you? Ahmad, feel free to step in any of these remaining questions here. Can you use Snap Center alongside Veeam? This might be one more so for Melissa, but
You really don't need to. Veeam would do anything that Snap Center would for you. If I'm still familiar with Snap Center, or you could use it in parallel. It's totally up to you. It might turn into, and I haven't worked with Snap Center in a while, so I might be speaking out of turn here, but it might turn into what works better for certain users, right? Through Veeam, you can do a lot of self-service through HTML5 interfaces and stuff like that. I'm not sure what the latest NetApp capabilities are in that regard. But there's nothing inherently bad with either solution. They do similar things though. So it's kind of like whatever meets your requirements.
okay, great. I think we have time for one more question. How do the backup assurance services work, and how best to engage with Veeam in a disaster scenario?
I don't know what you mean by backup assurances, but if you're talking about testing your backups to make sure that they're valid, that's where Sure Backup would come in, or Sure Replica. And you can do all that from NetApp snapshots as well. What you would do is you'd set a couple things up on the Veeam side, and then you would be able to basically just start up the VMs from those backups to make sure that they're okay. And in the event of a disaster, it really comes back to that Veeam disaster recovery orchestrator that's going to leverage your Veeam environment and your NetApp environment under the covers to kind of automate all that for you.
Okay, thank you. And I believe that is all the time we do have today. I want to thank both of our presenters, Melissa Palmer and Ahmad Edelat from NetApp, Melissa Palmer from Veeam, for the time today. If you do have, or actually for people who might have joined late, we should have a follow-up email coming with a replay of the webcast, so you can watch it at your discretion. And if you do have any questions, Ahmad, Melissa, if you have any final signing off notes and would like to provide any information for folks to follow up, feel free.
Yeah, I just wanted to take this time because I did see a question that come in that I think I replied, I sent the answer to all that was really asking whether we require StorageGRID at all in the solution, or can we, like, you can just get away with E Series, for example, right? But there are a couple of points that I wanted to touch on that. One is we see a lot of customers definitely leveraging both solutions. One is as the primary landing of the backups, the fast, you want to keep like a single restore point on your E Series system and offload the older backups to free up that storage on your E Series system to, like a longer term S3 solution such as StorageGRID. And StorageGRID is a multi-data center, definitely like a distributed object storage solution. So a lot of the features that comes with it, with the data protection scheme, such as erasure coding and making replicated copies of your data, so you can always play around with the storage efficiency that you get with your backups as well. Like you can store your backups over multiple data centers. So those are all the solutions that you get with the kind of like the mixed solution when you mix E Series with StorageGRID. And also on top of that, you have the Veeam cloud tier technology that's really designed to leverage both of the solutions together, right? Like it has the smart block offloading technology, and you get to leverage all of those technologies all together.
Excellent. All right, thank you. All right, so thank you very much for the time today, everybody. If you do have any questions, definitely look out for that follow-up email from us, and we can be able to field your questions from there. But otherwise, thanks for the time today, and we'll see you on the next one. Again, thanks, Melissa and Ahmad, and have a great rest of the day, everybody. Thank you.